All right. Okay, so part two. Yeah, I was just outside and the chemtrails are just heinous. The haze is like, even just around here, the haze is low and thick and you can feel it on your lips. It's horrid. Horrid, horrid. Okay, so the story about a dog. Okay, so in 2010, I ended up on this farm. And at first I was really excited about it because there were some people that were doing some, old shamanistic type work practices. And so wanted to learn more from them, but actually got on this farm and was doing like an apprenticeship. The farm was on the coast. Anyway, there was a lady and a husband. They were older than me. The lady hadn't really been involved with a lot of the shamanism stuff, but the husband had, or not husband, boyfriend. Anyway, it was one of those situations where she thought that she needed him and just kind of allowed him to do all kinds of really ended up being pretty heinous things. So when I got there, they had this dog. She was a sweet little dog, but she laid in the same spot outside. Mind you, it's on the coast where it's really wet. She didn't really have very thick hair. And, the husband never, or the boyfriend never really liked this woman's dog. So he started like forbidding, mind you, this is her property. It's paid off. He's farming it, but he doesn't really get where his dinner's coming from, obviously. Took me a couple of months to figure out exactly what was going on. It was pretty sinister, so I ended up leaving. And, the woman deserved everything that she got because you think that you need somebody in your life more so than your moral or ethical compass. You're probably more so wrong and evil for allowing things of this kind of nature to happen. So something that can happen is dogs can get, chicken allergies. So the woman, like, almost, because she couldn't deal with standing up to this guy, I think he had like completely taken over. Okay, this was an old house built in the 1900s. It was sat on like 15 acres of land or something like that. We were farming like 10 of it. Plus we had other locations down the coast that we actually, put in food production and stuff like that. So he had hated her son. And so early on, he couldn't seem to kick the son out. And the son, didn't really want to do anything. He just wanted to be on his computer or whatever else in his room. And he probably couldn't deal with this guy. So basically, the farmer guy, drilled holes in the ceiling roof of the son's bedroom so that rain started to pour into the bedroom. Leak. In an attempt to get rid of the son. Well, he stayed until things got really, really bad, a couple of years. And then he started having black mold growing in the room. And the farmer guy lied about he didn't really say what he had done to make the roof bad. He didn't add that in, but it became apparent, early on that there was a problem with the roof, and he refused to fix it. And so the woman never called a roofer to have somebody come and look at it to fix it. And the farmer wouldn't allow the son to move into any other room. And so the kid was like forced out of the house, had to move because there's like not going to be any place else for him to, there's a few other bedrooms, but he wasn't allowed to have them. And then there was a point after I had been there like 2 months that I actually opened that bedroom door to look inside. And it was dangerous. It was like kind of after 6 months of being there, just all the things that I saw. But the house was not a safe place for anyone to live in with all the black mold in that room. So it was on everything, the dressers, the beds, the floor, the walls. And it's like this woman, like, I guess because she needed a man for whatever reason. I don't know how you bury your head in the sand against that stuff. Which makes you, probably more evil. Because you're not going to stand up for your son or your kids or your house that's being damaged. Hello. So she did the same thing to her dog. And it was a sweet dog. But one of the things that happened was the dog didn't move. It stayed curled up in the same spot. It was kind of a wet climate. The dog really needed to be inside where it was drier. The farmer had kind of quarantined the dog out of even the shed and other places, because he labeled the dog as dumb and that the dog, wasn't community consciousness and all this other crazy stuff. Well, I can't see things suffer, so I should have known that I would have been like majorly targeted. Plus, we had a guy who lived in the forest that came down periodically, who was an amazing compost alchemist. One of the main reason I went to biodynamic school, quit that farm and went to college at Rudolf Steiner College. But he was pretty abusive himself and completely wacko and super, super dangerous. And he would come down and deal with the compost periodically. So I was terrified of that guy, like literally terrified. When the farmer would leave periodically to go do things, I was like terrified that, wacko from the forest was going to do me in. So I was, didn't sleep well in the house, locked the doors, and I didn't talk to him when he was on the property and I was there by myself. So anyway, there's a lot of really crazy, stuff going on, but there is everybody where it's because people bury their heads in the sand. But anyway, so this is about the dog. So on Wednesdays, we had CSA. And so we would get up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and start picking produce. And we did Farmer's Choice every week. And, we had amazing vegetables and produce and sometimes lamb, chickens. We did our own fryers, eggs. The lady brought in goat milk. There was like cheeses. Sometimes we had fresh fish of the day that was caught that because we were right on the path there in Noya Harbor. So fishermen would drop off their excess and we would sell it with our CSA for the day. Anyway, it was, as far as the community was concerned and the farming part and aspect of it in CSA, it was pretty amazing, really. So, and we had about 70 people that every week we did CSA for consecutively. And we had other people, that would come in and buy here and there. So for a small urban farm, it was pretty successful, actually. So anyway, so this dog, basically people saw the dog always laying in the same spot, like waiting for it to die. Like the dog never got up, never greeted anybody, was super sick. And, never really even saw it move around. So I don't like that. And I have the ability to fix animals and people and understand them, and that's just resurrect them. So I began working with this dog and doing adjustments and reboots and checking its coat out and putting together a bed. And I found like a fur, like a sheep fur. And so the dog started having a place to go. And then I started realizing, like, the woman had nothing to do with the dog because she had to bury her head in the sand and couldn't, actually acknowledge what was happening to the dog. She couldn't acknowledge what this guy had done in a very like secretive, covert, really evil kind of way. Otherwise, you have to fix it if you acknowledge it, right? If you acknowledge it, then you have to do something about it. This is the first time where I really started to see dissidence, I think is what they call it, psychological dissidence, where you just pretend to see what you don't see, and bury your head in the sand. And you know what? You have no right to complain about your life because, you're just as evil as the evil that you're allowing the people to do in your life. And, my whole take on it is that we're supposed to take care of, all my relations. So I'm supposed to take care of that dog. I'm supposed to take care of the birds. I'm supposed to cultivate food for those kinds of animals. And so if they don't have it, or, put out water for them, or, it's my responsibility to notice what's going on with them and take care of those. Right. So anyway, so over about a 2-month period, so I decided that so the farmer wasn't feeding the dog. Nobody was feeding the dog. They just ignored it. And this was a dog that was a smaller dog, had short fur. So probably would have been mostly indoor dog in the first few years, right? So it didn't really know how to deal with the outside, and it was so depressed. It was just curling up. It was starving. And the other thing too is nobody ever really put out fresh water for it. So I started making a nice little bed in an area, right? And then made sure every morning that she had fresh water. And then started going into town to the dog food place and getting her, grain free. And I realized she probably had a chicken allergy. So the farmer would torture her because he would freeze all the chicken innards from our, fryers when we pull all those innards out. And then that's all he would give her in a bowl. So periodically when he felt like it, he would thaw some innards raw and throw them in a bowl. And this poor dog, didn't really have the kind of teeth that it was going to take to chew through some of that stuff. And you could hear her gagging. She was so starving that she would wobble over to this bowl and eat that stuff, but she was really seriously allergic to it and couldn't chew it properly. And then you could hear her gagging, and she'd still eat it because she was starving. And so I realized she probably had a serious chicken allergy by this point. And so I started to go get some lamb, with some peas and brown rice and stuff in it. And so that she could eat it. And she was so grateful. And I would feed her in the morning and I would feed her in the night. And so I really started taking care of her. And so she started following me around. This is before I had Jen. And so I'd have my wheelbarrow, and periodically during the day, she'd be trotting with me, on the days that she felt a little better and it was warmer out. And then she got better and better and better. And so people that were coming, to help volunteer on Wednesdays to cut produce, basically were like, "Where'd that dog come from?" And I'd be like, "Well, that's the dog that's been here the whole time." And they're like, "The one that was dead? At the front of the yard up there, dead?" And I said, "Yeah, I started," and I felt really bad because when I left the farm, because I left I left kind of under a big fight. I was tired of seeing, everything that was going on. And I think the word was getting around about how the farmer kind of was torturing this dog. And a lot of the people that would come and help cut produce really had dogs and were really sensitive to it, because I didn't lie. I just say, this is, like what's going on. And that's why the dog's dying and it's sick. And so I really tried, and the week before I was leaving, really tried to have some people try to help me, like, kidnap the dog so that I didn't look like I was involved, and so that we could find the dog, like, another home kind of a thing. But nobody would, be involved in it. And so I had a lot of anxiety because I had to leave the farm because of the horridness. But I felt super bad for the dog. But I completely 100% had rehabilitated her with fresh water and fresh food and adjustments and brain reboots to bring the body and the hard drive, the brain back together so that the brain could actually regenerate the system. And she became like a totally different dog. Eventually, she was following people around, kind of barking and playing and jumping and playing with the children. And you know what? I think that I just really angered the farmer because he'd been working so hard at killing the dog slowly and painfully. So it didn't look like, he outright killed the dog. That it actually, suffered and died on its own. And now here it is, like, totally rehabilitated and happy, and and I almost feel bad that maybe, that I rehabilitated that dog and then left and have no idea what happened to it, and that there's a good possibility, the suffering continued and then the dog eventually died. But anyway, at least while I was there, I touched the dog and held the dog and worked on the dog, and it was part of my daily, effort. And I think that people wouldn't need doctors or vets or any of this other stuff if they were more in tune with, caring and love and nutrition and a lot of these other things. Your dog, wouldn't eat a towel or a sock if it was, getting the right food, or maybe it needed some more fiber to unblock, its digestive tract or its colon, or maybe, it's emotionally trying to, kill itself because it doesn't really like its environment. So there are a lot of things that, happen. And I sometimes feel like, working on people, people are not, they're just so close-minded and dark and have their own agendas. And if they're not the dark ones, then they're living with dark ones, and they need that dark person to be around, that they will allow their children to be abused. They'll allow themselves to be abused. They'll allow, animals to be abused. And I think enablers, codependent enablers, are probably more sinister and evil and are not allowed, should not be allowed to be considered victims, right? Because they participated willingly, because they either was about money, compromise themselves, overlook things, agreed to participate for money or fame or a relationship, I have friends of mine that read tarot cards, and they always say, oh man, it's always about the money or the honey. So, they are not allowed to be victims. And they should be treated accordingly, because they are, involved with the suffering. And especially in America in this day and age, you can get up and leave. You could get up and leave and move. If I had somebody that was abusing my children, I would handcuff them and make a citizen's arrest. I don't care how much I love them. They'd go down. It just wouldn't happen. If I saw a person, beating an animal, I would handcuff them. I would, run at them and throw them down and hog tie them and call the sheriff's department and have them arrested. I just, have, my head's not buried in the sand. And I've worked on a lot of animals, and I've worked on a lot of people who have been abused and defenseless. And that, that abuse was wielded, and usually there was consent by the mother for whatever reason. We're not living in the dark ages anymore, where you wouldn't be able to get a job and you wouldn't be able to get help if you left your husband, like, in the 1950s. So, and you don't need a relationship. What you need is an education. And what you need is traveling. And what you need is to wake up. And, like I tell people all the time, like I've been like celibate and single, 17 years. I know I keep saying that 17 years keeps coming up year after year, but I'm happy. I mean, once I broke the relationship, genetic heretical, patterning, took about 3 years. It was like, why in the hell would I want someone in my life that wasn't compatible? That I would have to actually fit myself into their life. And you know what? That was the problem in every relationship, is that, I brought out the worst in them eventually because of my questioning and desire for my own change and shifting and my own spiritual practices and my own spiritual road. And that came first. My relationship with the Creator was first and foremost. And so you think about all these people in relationships, and they're like, oh yeah, God's first. Well, God ain't first. Your, marriage is first, right? All these other things are first. So all these things that some of these organized religion, spew out, they're not actually practicing. So anyway, and I took an oath. How I got involved in that was that I ended up taking an oath of celibacy for a year. And that it led to 2 years, it led to 3 years, and then I got distracted with other things, and I forgot to go out and have drinks, and I forgot to buy expensive clothes to bait men, and I forgot to, shave my legs and my armpits, and I forgot to do all these other things in order to have a relationship, and put the makeup on and falsify and wear my falsified identity of who I am. And, this is the deal. My father that raised me was incredible. And I set every man by his standard. And I haven't met a guy who can even come close. So why would I date somebody that's less than what I know is possible? So, when the man shows up, if he shows up in my life experience, then, I might forego and and descend into a relationship. But I'm okay. I live in my van, and I spend most of the year in my van. Winters are a little bit sketchy, but I make it through. So if I can manage under being attacked by the state, being attacked by the government, manage to hold on to my belief systems, to continue to educate myself, to continue to do the work that I believe is necessary for Earth to heal, to be a one-man band because everybody else is asleep, including the people who are conscious, then I'm okay with that. I'm okay. And I don't need anyone to provide anything for me, right? So I do the best I can with what I have. And I keep learning and growing, and I feel blessed, actually. Probably feel more blessed than, if I had married white collar, blue blood, which could have happened. And I probably would have ended up dead, murdered, because they were, what I know now is they were handlers. So anyway, this dog story, sorry about it, kind of got off on a tangent, but we can, regenerate. We can die and be completely mummified and come back into that body and rehydrate it. That's kind of like the point I'm trying to get across. And I know that just seems like so far out there. But the Tibetan monks do it all the time. They've done it for centuries in caves where, a monk will be sitting in lotus position in the same exact spot. And I've talked about this before. And they become mummified. And then they travel the other worlds for 1,200, 500 years. And then they come back into the body because they know exactly where the point of entry is. Right? That's why the body is in a cave and it can't be moved. It can't be even breathed on. Like the piece of clothing can't even be moved. And it's interesting to me because you think about like the Egyptian mummies, even though I think that the whole pyramid thing is kind of a scam. I think that it was a movie set that was created, and there's parts of the movie sets that were left from the other 4 extinctions. Right, we're now in the 5th extinction, and that's why they're working really hard to create a new race of humans or humanoids to repopulate the planet. And they've tried to attempt to put some of these hybrids. There's a woman who wrote a book about a hybrid from a college that her daughter attended. I wish I could remember the book, and that was like in the 70s. And there was her roommate, her daughter's roommate. Her daughter was like part blind, and her roommate was a hybrid. And once she was found out, they disposed of her. So, which is pretty sad too, right? You can't fit in. Who in the hell can fit in on this planet? It's like an unmeetable task. I mean, you're just not going to be able to meet that task. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, the experience here can be a lot more vast and bigger than you could ever kind of imagine. But the problem is that most people are stuck in the belief systems, even bullshit crapola science, and what the potential is, right? So your vehicle is a vehicle that you're in. It's a machine. It's a biological machine. So, of course, you could leave it and come back at any point in time, and it could rehydrate its system. It's a machine. It's a biological machine. Can you hear One of the birds is knocking on the outside of the shed. Probably wants me to come out there and put some seeds out there or something. I don't know. Anyway, they're always like busy trying to talk to me and trying to get me to bend to their will. The dogs, the cats, the wild cat here visits me. I don't know where it comes from, like the woods or whatever. It comes kind of close to the houses at night because of the coyotes, but it comes periodically and will meow. Like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, wants me to get up and feed it something, except for I never have cat food, so I never really feed it anything. So, but anyway, it's all good. Anyway, so like the dog, you just give your body a little attention and you can regenerate it into whatever you want it to be, right? But it does take action. And so I guess that's all I wanted to talk about today, this morning. So this is the end of part 2. And thanks for listening. Bridget Lynn Dolgoff, Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project.